The rain poured relentlessly over the sprawling city, drowning the neon lights in silver streaks. Cars rushed through the flooded streets, their headlights cutting through the darkness, while pedestrians hurried under umbrellas, desperate to escape the storm. In the middle of this chaos, on a quiet corner of a street, sat a young woman, drenched, shivering, and forgotten by the world. Her name was Youhani Singh. She wore ragged clothes, her hair matted with rain, her hands wrapped around herself for warmth. People passed her by as if she were invisible, another nameless face in a city that chewed the weak and spit them out. She had been homeless for years, an orphan abandoned by fate, carrying nothing but the weight of survival on her shoulders. Yet in her tired eyes, there was still a faint spark of resilience, as if life hadn't managed to break her completely. That same night, not far from where she sat, a sleek black luxury car rolled to a stop at the traffic lights. Inside sat Youraj, one of the most powerful billionaires in the country, the man who could bend industries to his will with a single phone call. His face was stern, chiseled by years of business wars, ambition, and a deep sense of control. But beneath all that power, he had one fragile weakness: his 7-year-old daughter, Kinza. Kinza was everything to him. Since the passing of her mother years ago, she was the only piece of warmth left in his otherwise cold and ruthless life. He provided her with the best education, toys, and comfort money could buy. But there was one thing he often failed to give her: his time and affection. As the car idled at the traffic light, little Kinza pressed her nose against the window, staring out at the storm. Her curious eyes caught sight of something unusual. There, huddled by the lamp-post, sat Youhani, soaked, cold, and fragile. "Papa," Kinza whispered, tugging at her father's sleeve. "Why is that woman sitting there in the rain? Doesn't she have a home?" Youraj frowned, slightly irritated. "Kinza, don't worry about such people. They're everywhere in this city. She's probably just another beggar." But Kinza didn't let go. She rolled down the window, letting the cold rain spray her face, and waved at the homeless woman. Youhani looked up, startled. For a moment she froze, unsure how to react. Then slowly she lifted her trembling hand and waved back. In that fleeting second, their eyes met. Kinza's innocent smile cut through the layers of pain Youhani had been carrying. No one had looked at her that way in years, not as a burden, not as a beggar, but as a person. Before Youhani could fully process it, the light turned green, and the car sped away. Yet that moment, tiny as it was, had planted a seed. The next day after school, Kinza couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the rain. While the driver steered the car toward their mansion, she suddenly insisted on taking a different route. "I want to see if she's there again," she demanded. The driver hesitated but finally gave in. And there she was, just as Kinza had hoped, sitting quietly on the same corner. This time, Kinza stepped out of the car despite the driver's protests. She walked up to the woman, her small shoes splashing in the puddles, and asked, "What's your name?" For a second, Youhani was stunned. Nobody had asked her name in years. People called her homeless, beggar, or simply ignored her existence. But here was a child, with eyes full of innocence, waiting for an answer. "My name is Youhani," she whispered. "And yours?" "I'm Kinza. My papa is very rich," the girl said proudly, then tilted her head curiously. "But why don't you have a house?" That question hit Youhani like a stone. Her lips trembled and her eyes filled with tears. "Because I have no one. No mother, no father. I'm all alone." Kinza thought for a moment, then gave the simplest, most profound answer her little heart could produce. "Then I'll be your friend." For the first time in years, Youhani smiled, a real smile, one born from hope, not survival. Days turned into weeks, and Kinza often sneaked food, chocolates, and even little trinkets from her home to give to Youhani. A bond formed between the billionaire's daughter and the homeless orphan, two souls from opposite worlds, yet connected by something purer than wealth or status: kindness. But fate was preparing a storm far darker than the one that had first brought them together. One evening, As Kinza's car returned from school, the driver took a wrong turn into a deserted street. Suddenly, a group of masked men blocked their path. Their target was clear, the billionaire's daughter. The driver tried to resist, but they dragged Kinza out, her screams piercing through the rain-soaked night. "Papa, Papa!" she cried, struggling in their grasp. At that very moment, across the street, Youhani saw everything. Without thinking, without fearing for her own life, she ran straight into the chaos. She pushed one of the kidnappers away with all her strength, grabbed Kinza's trembling hand, and shouted, "Run!" And so, in the heart of the storm, a homeless orphan and a billionaire's daughter ran for their lives. Behind them, the kidnappers gave chase. Ahead of them, danger loomed with every step. That night, destiny had taken an unexpected turn. A woman society had discarded was now the only shield standing between innocence and darkness, and what she carried within her, the secret of her past, would leave the world stunned. The rain was merciless that night. Heavy drops lashed against the pavement, the sound of thunder rolling through the sky like a warning of what was about to unfold. "Run, Kinza!" Youhani shouted, her voice shaking but firm, pulling the little girl's hand tightly as they darted into the flooded street. Behind them, the kidnappers cursed and yelled, their footsteps splashing in pursuit. The headlights of the yellow delivery truck cut through the rain, momentarily blinding them, but Youhani didn't stop. Her bare feet, numb from the cold water, slapped against the pavement. All that mattered was the child's trembling hand she held in her own. Kinza was sobbing, her small legs struggling to keep pace. "They're coming! They're coming!" she cried. "I won't let them take you," Youhani promised, though her own heart pounded with fear. She had nothing, no money, no power, no weapons, but she had courage. And in that moment, it was enough. They ducked into a narrow alley, the flickering streetlight above barely illuminating their path. Trash bins, broken glass, and puddles turned the alley into a battlefield. Youhani pressed Kinza against the wall and crouched in front of her. "Shh, stay quiet," she whispered, putting a finger to her lips. "No matter what happens, don't let go of my hand." Kinza nodded, tears streaking down her rain-soaked face. The kidnappers entered the alley seconds later, their heavy boots echoing like war drums. One of them kicked over a trash can, sending it clattering loudly. "She's got the girl. They couldn't have gone far," one of them shouted. Youhani's pulse quickened. She scanned the alley. There was a rusted fire escape above. If she could climb, maybe they could hide. With all her strength, she hoisted Kinza up, whispering, "Climb, sweetheart. Don't look down." Her arms ached as she pushed the child upward, the metal slippery from the rain. Just as Kinza reached the first rung, one of the kidnappers spotted them. "There they are!" Adrenaline surged through Youhani. She yanked herself up after Kinza, her fingers raw against the rusted metal. A hand grabbed her ankle, pulling her down, but she kicked furiously, breaking free. The men cursed and scrambled, but the fire escape groaned under their weight. Kinza reached the platform first, pulling at Youhani's arm with all her tiny strength. "You can do it!" she cried. With a final heave, Youhani pulled herself up. She scooped Kinza into her arms and sprinted across the platform, her heart hammering. The men were still climbing, but slower now. "Hold on to me," she whispered, clutching the girl. Then, with reckless courage, she leapt across the gap to the next rooftop. For a terrifying second, it felt like they were flying, two souls caught in midair. They landed hard, Youhani stumbling, but she refused to fall. She shielded Kinza with her body, absorbing the impact. Pain shot through her knees, but she rose again. The kidnappers cursed from behind, unable to follow so easily. For now, they were safe. They hid inside an abandoned warehouse nearby. The broken windows let the rain seep in, but it was shelter, at least for the moment. Kinza clung to Youhani, still trembling. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," Youhani said gently, brushing the wet hair from the girl's face. "But you're safe with me, I promise." Kinza looked into her eyes that were tired, lonely, but filled with fierce determination. In that moment, Kinza believed her completely. "Why are you helping me?" the child asked softly. Youhani hesitated. She had asked herself the same question as she ran. Why risk her life for a girl she barely knew? She could have stayed in the shadows, invisible like she always was. But something about Kinza had touched her heart in a way nothing else had in years. "Because no one helped me when I was your age," she finally whispered. "And I swore, if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't let another child suffer like I did." Kinza hugged her tightly, her small arms wrapping around Youhani's soaked clothing. It was the first time in years Youhani had felt the warmth of human affection. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Youraj was pacing furiously. His phone buzzed with calls from the police, the driver's panicked voice still echoing in his ears. "They took her," the driver had said. "Masked men?" "They pulled her out of the car." Youraj's chest tightened, his usually controlled demeanor cracking. Kinza was his everything. He couldn't lose her. But then came an unexpected detail. "Sir, there was a woman." She appeared out of nowhere. She grabbed Kinza and ran. "I don't know who she was." "A woman? Who?" Youraj clenched his fists. Was she part of the kidnappers? Or was she saving his daughter? For the first time in his life, the billionaire felt powerless. All his wealth, all his influence meant nothing if he couldn't protect Kinza. Back in the warehouse, the rain eased slightly, leaving behind the eerie quiet of dripping water. Youhani sat by the broken window, watching for movement outside. Kinza lay against her, slowly drifting into exhausted sleep. For a moment, Youhani allowed herself to breathe. But in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The men would not stop, and soon she would have to make a choice, disappear with Kinza into the night or face the storm head-on. As she stroked Kinza's hair, memories of her own childhood surfaced. Being abandoned at an orphanage, the nights she cried herself to sleep, wishing someone would hold her. The day she was cast out, told she was too old, too unwanted. She had grown up believing she was worthless. But tonight, holding this frightened child, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Far away in the safety of his mansion, Youraj stood at the window, staring into the storm. His heart was torn between fear and anger, but deep down, an unfamiliar feeling gnawed at him. Curiosity. Who was this mysterious woman who had risked everything for his daughter? The answer was on its way, and when it came, it would shatter everything he thought he knew. The storm had passed, leaving the city wet, glistening under the neon glow. But inside the billionaire's mansion, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Youraj stood in the center of his massive study, his fists clenched, his usually sharp eyes burning with fear and frustration. His phone vibrated constantly, calls from the police commissioner, private investigators, and his business associates who had heard the news. Everyone wanted answers. But there was only one answer he wanted. Where was Kinza? The driver had repeated the same detail a dozen times. "She would have been gone, sir." They were too many, too fast. But a woman. A homeless woman, I think. She grabbed Kinza and ran. She fought them off like she had nothing to lose. The words echoed in his mind. Who was she? Why would someone like her risk everything for a stranger's child? By morning, the story had reached the media. Billionaire's daughter kidnapped, saved by unknown woman. Who is the mystery heroine? From shadows to savior, the hunt for Kinza continues. Reporters camped outside Youraj's mansion, their cameras flashing, their questions merciless. "Mr. Youraj, do you know the woman? Is she a friend? An accomplice? Do you trust her with your daughter's life?" Every question was a knife twisting deeper into his already raw nerves. The world looked to him for answers, but he had none. For once, the billionaire was powerless. Meanwhile, in an abandoned community shelter on the outskirts of the city, Youhani sat by a broken wall, holding Kinza close. The child's head rested on her shoulder, exhausted from the terror of the night. The shelter smelled of mold and damp wood. Rats scurried in the corners, but it was hidden. And for now, safe. As Kinza slept, Youhani's mind drifted back to her past. She remembered the orphanage, rows of iron beds, the cold stare of the caretakers, the endless hunger. She remembered waiting at the gate every Sunday, watching other children get adopted, hoping someone would pick her. But no one ever did. By the time she was old enough, she was cast out into the streets. No guidance, no family, just survival. Her fists clenched as she looked down at Kinza. "Not her," she whispered. "She won't go through what I did." Kinza stirred in her sleep and mumbled, "Papa." The word stung. For all her promises, Youhani wasn't Kinza's real protector. That was Youraj, a man who had everything except the time to see what really mattered. Still, for this moment, Kinza was hers to protect. Hours later, police sirens echoed in the distance. Patrol cars combed the streets. Flyers with Kinza's picture were being plastered across the city. Youhani peered through the crack in the shelter wall. She knew she couldn't hide forever. But if she stepped out, what then? The police wouldn't trust her. The world wouldn't believe her. To them, she was just another vagrant, another nameless face unworthy of trust. And yet, if she didn't take that step, Kinza's safety could slip away again. At the mansion, Youraj stood before a wall of security monitors. His private team was working overtime, scanning every street, every alley. One of his men approached. "Sir, we found something. CCTV footage from near the docks." The screen flickered to life. There she was, the woman, drenched, barefoot, clutching Kinza's hand as they ran across rooftops. The grainy footage showed her shielding the child with her body, fighting off one of the men, then disappearing into the night. For a moment, silence filled the room. "Zoom in," Youraj ordered. The camera focused on her face, tired. Desperate but burning with determination. "She's young," one of the guards muttered. "Looks like she's been living on the streets." Youraj's eyes narrowed. Something about her struck him deeply. A flicker of familiarity he couldn't quite place, but he pushed the thought aside. "Find her," he ordered coldly. "Alive, and bring my daughter back." Back at the shelter, Kinza finally woke. Her eyes widened when she saw Youhani sitting beside her, gently offering her a piece of bread she had scavenged. "It's not much," Youhani said softly, "but it'll keep you strong." Kinza smiled faintly and took a bite. Then, in her small, honest voice, she said, "You're like my mama." The words hit Youhani like lightning. Her throat tightened. She wasn't Kinza's mother. She had no right to be. But hearing it, feeling the child's trust, made her heart ache with something she had long buried, the longing to belong. As night fell again, the kidnappers regrouped. Their leader slammed his fist against the table. "That woman ruined everything, but she won't get far. She's nobody. She'll slip up. And when she does, we'll take them both." They spread across the city like shadows, hunting. And while they searched, Youraj sat alone in his study, staring at the blurred CCTV image of the homeless woman. Who was she really? Why would someone with nothing risk everything for his daughter? He didn't know yet. But soon the truth would unravel, and when it did, it would not only shock him, it would change his life forever. The mansion gates swung open as the convoy of black SUVs rolled in. Inside one of them sat Youraj, his expression hard as stone, though his heart beat with restless fire. Days had passed since the kidnapping attempt. The city was restless. The media wouldn't stop. His business partners whispered doubts behind his back. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Kinza, and the mysterious woman who had saved her. He had finally received word from his investigators. They had tracked her, Youhani Singh, to an abandoned shelter. She was with Kinza, safe. But questions swirled like a storm in his mind. Was she a savior, or was she part of the trap all along? The convoy stopped outside the broken-down shelter. Police surrounded the building, their guns raised, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Inside, Youhani froze as the beams of light slashed across the cracked walls. She pulled Kinza close. The child stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. "What's happening?" Kinza murmured. "They've found us," Youhani whispered. Her heart hammered. She had done everything to keep Kinza safe, but now the world would judge her. The door slammed open. Armed officers poured in. "Hands up!" one barked. Kinza screamed and clung to Youhani. But before panic could spread further, a commanding voice sliced through the chaos. "Wait!" It was Youraj. He stepped inside. his tailored suit drenched from the rain, his presence dominating the ruined shelter. His eyes locked on the scene, his precious daughter in the arms of a homeless woman. Time seemed to freeze. "Papa!" Kinza cried, breaking free from Youhani's arms and running to him. Youraj dropped to his knees, scooping her up, holding her tightly as if afraid she would vanish again. His mask of control shattered in that instant, replaced by raw relief. "My angel, you're safe," he whispered, pressing his face into her soaked hair. But when his eyes lifted again, they hardened, focused on Youhani. She stood there trembling, her clothes torn, her eyes defiant yet filled with fear. "This is her?" he asked the officers. "Yes, sir," one replied. "The woman who fought the kidnappers." Youraj studied her silently. He saw the exhaustion etched into her face, the bruises on her arms, the stubborn fire in her eyes. She looked fragile, yet unbreakable. Kinza tugged at his sleeve. "Papa, don't be angry. She saved me." "She's my friend." The room fell silent. For a long moment, Youraj said nothing. Then he gestured to the officers. "Leave us." They hesitated but obeyed, filing out of the shelter until only 3 remained. Youraj, Kinza, and Youhani. The billionaire rose slowly, his daughter still clinging to him, and took a step toward the woman. "You," he said coldly. "Why? Why would someone like you risk your life for her?" Youhani's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but the words felt heavy. Would he even believe her? "I didn't think," she finally said. "I just couldn't watch a child be taken." Youraj's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that? People like you don't do things without reason. Did someone pay you? Are you part of them?" "No." Her voice cracked, but her stance was firm. "I've never had anyone in my life. No family, no home. I know what it's like to be alone, to cry for help and have no one come. I couldn't let her suffer like I did." Her words hung in the air, raw and piercing. Kinza slipped down from her father's arms and ran to Youhani, hugging her tightly. "She's telling the truth, Papa. She protected me the whole time. She gave me food, she made me feel safe. Please, don't be mad at her." Youraj's chest tightened. His daughter's innocence clashed against his instincts. He wanted to trust her. He wanted to believe this woman had no hidden agenda. But years of power, wealth, and betrayal had taught him to doubt. Still, looking into Youhani's eyes, he saw something he rarely saw in anyone. Honesty. He exhaled slowly. "Fine, you'll come with us. But hear me clearly. If I find out you had any part in this, you won't live to regret it." For a moment, fear flickered across her face. But then she nodded. "I understand." The ride back to the mansion was tense. Rain battered the windows, the city lights blurred by the storm. Kinza sat between them, holding both their hands as if trying to bridge the vast gulf that separated their worlds. Youraj kept glancing at Youhani, studying her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. She looked so out of place in the leather seats of his luxury car, her clothes tattered, her bare feet muddy. And yet the way she comforted Kinza, it was something even he, with all his wealth, had failed to do. When they arrived at the mansion, the staff gasped at the sight of the ragged woman walking beside their master. Whispers rippled through the hallways, but Kinza didn't care. She clung to Youhani's hand and declared proudly, "This is my friend. She saved me." That night, in a guest room far grander than anything she had ever known, Youhani sat on the edge of a bed too soft for her weary body. She stared at the walls, overwhelmed. How had she ended up here? From the cold streets to the mansion of a billionaire. From being invisible to being the center of a storm. She didn't belong here. And yet, as Kinza snuggled beside her, refusing to sleep anywhere else, she felt something stir in her chest, something she had buried long ago, a sense of home. In his study, however, Youraj poured himself a drink, staring at the fire. His mind replayed everything, the kidnappers, the CCTV footage, the shelter, her words. Something about her gnawed at him. Something familiar he couldn't place. He whispered to himself, "Who are you really, Youhani Singh?" He didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question would unravel secrets buried in the shadows of both their pasts. Secrets that would leave everyone speechless. The morning sun painted the marble floors of the mansion in gold. But despite the grandeur, the house felt heavy, filled with whispers, suspicions, and unspoken questions. For the first time in years, the billionaire's palace hosted someone who didn't belong. Youhani Singh sat at the breakfast table, awkwardly picking at the food placed before her. Crystal dishes overflowed with fruit, bread, and delicacies she hadn't tasted in years, if ever. The silver fork trembled slightly in her hand as she lifted a bite. Across from her sat Youraj, expression unreadable, his sharp eyes watching her like a hawk. Between them sat Kinza, cheerful and oblivious to the tension, chatting happily. "Papa, Youhani makes the best stories. She told me about the stars last night and how they can guide lost people home. Isn't that beautiful?" Youraj forced a smile at his daughter, but his gaze slid back to Youhani. She avoided his eyes. Later that day, Youraj called for his private investigator. In a low voice, he demanded, "Find everything on her. Where she came from. Every detail." The investigator hesitated. "Sir, about that. Her records are almost non-existent. No permanent address, no family. But there is one thing." Youraj's brows knitted. "Go on." "We traced her back to an orphanage on the east side. Records are old, incomplete. But her surname, Singh, matches the name of a woman who once worked for your family." Youraj stiffened. Memories rushed back, faint, distant, but undeniable. Could it be? That evening, as the mansion quieted, Youhani wandered the garden. She felt like an intruder in this world of chandeliers and silk curtains. Every corner whispered that she didn't belong. Her fingers brushed the flowers, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. But the peace was short-lived. A voice behind her, deep, steady. "Tell me the truth." "Who are you, really?" She turned. It was Youraj. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with intensity. "I already told you," she replied softly. "I'm nobody. Just a girl who grew up on the streets?" "No," he said firmly, stepping closer. "You're more than that. Your name, Singh, it's not unfamiliar to me. My mother once had a maid by that name. She had a daughter. She disappeared one night, never to be seen again. That daughter's name was Youhani." The word left her lips before she could stop herself. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as memories surged. She sank onto the bench, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Yes, that was my mother. She worked in your house when I was little. I remember running through your halls, playing with toys that weren't mine. But then, one night, everything was taken. My mother, she died suddenly. I was sent to the orphanage. And from there, nothing. No one came for me." Youraj froze. Images of his childhood flashed before him, vague memories of a little girl running alongside him, laughter echoing in the grand halls. He had forgotten her, buried her existence under years of wealth and power. And now, she stood before him, the homeless woman who had saved his daughter. Was once a part of his own past. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Youraj spoke, his voice quieter. "Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you seek me, the family?" Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "Because no one cared. I was just the maid's daughter, forgotten, invisible, and when you're invisible long enough, you stop believing anyone will see you." The words hit him like a blow. For all his wealth, for all his power, he realized he had lived blind to the pain of others around him. Just then, a small voice broke the moment. "Are you fighting?" Both turned. Kinza stood at the doorway, holding a stuffed toy. She looked worried, her big eyes darting between them. "No, Angel," Youraj said quickly, forcing calm. "We're just talking." Kinza ran to Youhani, climbing onto her lap. "Don't be sad. You're not invisible. Not to me." Tears finally escaped Youhani's eyes as she hugged the little girl tightly. That night, as the mansion settled into uneasy quiet, shadows moved in the city. The kidnappers had not given up. Their leader, enraged by failure, now had a new plan. "She's in the mansion," he hissed. "Both of them. The child and the woman who ruined us. This time we take them from under his nose. And when we do, The billionaire will pay more than just money. The hunt was far from over. Back at the mansion, Youraj stood at his window, staring into the night. His mind replayed the revelations of the evening. The woman who had saved his daughter was tied to his past, a past he had forgotten, a past that had returned to his doorstep in the most unexpected way. And for the first time in years, he felt a shift in his soul, a crack in the armor he had built. But outside those walls, danger crept closer, ready to strike again, and this time, no one would be safe. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Moonlight spilled across the marble floors, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of danger. Guards patrolled the grounds, but somewhere beyond the high iron gates, unseen eyes watched. Inside, Kinza slept peacefully, curled against a pillow, clutching the stuffed toy Youhani had given her. The room was warm, safe, at least on the surface, but Youhani couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the darkness, her instincts screaming that something wasn't right. Years on the streets had sharpened her senses. She knew when danger lurked. Tonight, the air itself felt heavy with threat. She whispered to herself, "They're coming." Downstairs in his study, Youraj reviewed the security reports, sipping a glass of water. His mind was restless, haunted by memories of the past, by the revelation that the woman under his roof, the savior of his daughter, was tied to his childhood. For the first time in years, he felt more than just responsibility or control. He felt guilt and gratitude, and something he couldn't yet name. Then suddenly, the alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the mansion's hallways. Guards shouted, "Breach at the east wall! They're inside!" Youraj's blood ran cold. The kidnappers had returned. Masked, armed, and merciless, they stormed the mansion like shadows. Silencers spat fire. Guards fell. The night erupted into chaos. Youraj raced upstairs, heart pounding. His one thought, Kinza. At the same time, Youhani burst into the little girl's room. Kinza stirred at the noise, fear clouding her innocent eyes. "Stay quiet, Angel," Youhani whispered, scooping her up. "I've got you." The door exploded open. A kidnapper charged in, weapon raised. Instinct took over. Youhani grabbed a broken lamp, swinging it with all her strength. It shattered against the intruder's head, sending him crashing down. She pulled Kinza into the hallway, running barefoot across the polished floors. Youraj appeared at the far end of the corridor, shouting, "This way!" But before they could reach him, more men poured in from the stairwell, cutting them off. Youraj's guards fought, but the kidnappers were ruthless, their leader barking orders, "Take the girl! Kill anyone in the way!" The mansion became a battlefield. Youhani pressed Kinza into a hidden alcove. "Don't move! No matter what happens, don't move!" Then she turned, facing the attackers with nothing but her bare hands. Years of surviving the streets had taught her how to fight, not with skill, but with desperation. She clawed, struck, kicked, anything to protect the child. Youraj fought too, using a guard's fallen weapon, his rage fueled by a father's love. For the first time, he and Youhani stood side by side, not enemies, not strangers, but allies bound by the same purpose, Kinza's life. The leader of the kidnappers finally emerged, tall, scarred, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can protect her, billionaire? She's ours. And you," he sneered at Youhani, "you're nothing, just a rat from the streets pretending to be a hero." Youraj's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, shielding both Kinza and Youhani. "She's not nothing. She's the reason my daughter is alive. And tonight, you'll learn exactly how wrong you are." The fight was brutal. Gunshots rang, glass shattered, screams echoed. At one point, Kinza cried out as a kidnapper grabbed her arm. But before the man could escape with her, Youhani hurled herself at him, taking the blow meant for the child. The struggle ended with the kidnapper unconscious, but Youhani collapsed, blood staining her shirt. "No!" Kinza screamed, clutching her. Youraj dropped to his knees, holding Youhani up. Her face was pale, her breathing ragged, but her eyes, even in pain, were fierce. "I told you," she whispered weakly. "I won't let her go through what I did." The police sirens wailed in the distance. Reinforcements stormed in, overwhelming the last of the kidnappers. The nightmare was finally over. But inside the mansion, the real story was only just beginning. Hours later, in the mansion's infirmary, Youhani lay on a bed, bandages covering her wounds. Kinza refused to leave her side, holding her hand tightly. Youraj stood at the foot of the bed, silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I owe you more than I can ever repay. You didn't just save my daughter. You saved me. From myself, from my blindness." Youhani's voice was soft, trembling. "I wasn't supposed to be part of your world. I never thought I'd even see you again." He stepped closer, his tone breaking. "But maybe you were always meant to be. I forgot you once, Youhani. I won't forget you again." The days that followed stunned everyone. The media exploded. Homeless woman revealed as Billionaire's childhood companion. From orphan to heroine, the untold story of Youhani Singh. Love, sacrifice, and redemption in the house of Youraj. The world watched as the impossible unfolded. But inside the mansion, away from cameras, the truth was simpler. A little girl named Kinza had found a second mother in the most unexpected place. A hardened billionaire had rediscovered his humanity, and a forgotten orphan had finally found a home. The final scene came one evening when the three of them walked together through the garden. Kinza held both their hands, swinging happily. "Papa," she said innocently, "can she stay with us forever? Please!" Youraj looked at Youhani. She met his eyes, her expression uncertain, fragile, and then for the first time Youraj smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "She's not going anywhere." "Kinza, not anymore." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fire. And as the shadows fell, three souls who had once been broken stood together, whole at last. What began as an act of courage by a forgotten woman had ended as a story of redemption, love, and family. The kind of story that left everyone speechless.